What started as an ordinary shopping trip with my husband changed at the checkout. He stepped aside to take a call, leaving me to pay. Just as I was about to walk out, an elderly security guard stopped me and asked, "Is that your husband?" I nodded, confused. "Come with me, dear. It's about your husband. You'd better see it for yourself." That quiet whisper from an elderly security guard at the supermarket, his eyes filled with a pity that scared me more than any threat, was the beginning of the end of my entire life. What he showed me on those grainy security monitors ripped open 7 years of lies, revealing my beloved husband was a cold-blooded monster systematically planning my destruction. I'm Amanda, and that morning had started like any other. Outside, a light autumn rain was falling. Gray clouds hung low over the city, and it seemed the day would be as gray and ordinary as dozens of others. I stretched, threw back the blanket, and headed to the kitchen, where the smell of freshly brewed coffee already filled the air. Ben, my husband, was sitting at the table with his phone in hand, occasionally sipping from his favorite blue mug. "Good morning," I said, pouring myself some coffee. "Morning," Ben replied shortly, without looking up from the screen. I sat down across from him, studying him. We had been together for 7 years. 7 years that had seemed quite happy. Although lately something had changed. Ben had become more distant, stayed at work longer, and his phone had turned into some sort of forbidden territory. But I pushed away the dark thoughts. He's probably just tired. His job is stressful. Lots of pressure. "We need to go to the store," I said, taking a bite of toast. "The fridge is almost empty, and we need to prepare something for the weekend." Ben nodded, still buried in his phone. "Okay, let's go after lunch. I just need to make a couple of calls." I looked at him and gave a faint smile. Always those calls, always some errands. But I didn't argue. I rarely argued at all. Maybe that was my mistake, being too accommodating, too pliable. The day dragged slowly. I did household chores, sorted through things in the closet, and tidied the shelves. The apartment was jointly owned, but registered in my name. It had happened after my mother passed away, and left me this 2-room apartment in a nice neighborhood. Ben moved in with me then, and we began living together. The apartment was cozy, bright, with large windows and a view of the old park. I loved this place. My childhood had been spent here. I felt safe here. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Ben came out of the room, dressed and ready to leave. "So, shall we go?" he asked, grabbing the car keys. I quickly put on my jacket and grabbed my bag. We went down to the car and Ben started the engine. The drive to the supermarket took about 15 minutes. Light music played on the radio. Ben tapped his fingers on the steering wheel in time while I gazed out the window at the gray streets, pedestrians with umbrellas and wet sidewalks. I remembered how Ben and I had met. It had been at a friend's office party. He had seemed so charming, attentive, and interesting. We talked all evening, and I felt I had finally met the right person. Ben was 5 years older than me. He worked as a sales manager at a construction company, traveled a lot for site visits, and met with clients. He could speak well, make an impression. I fell in love quickly and completely. The first years of our life together were happy. We traveled on vacations, hosted evenings with friends, cooked dinners. Ben was attentive, gave flowers for no reason, complimented me. I felt loved and needed, but gradually something began to change. At first subtly, then increasingly obvious. Ben became more withdrawn and irritable. His phone was always with him, and he never left it unattended. When I asked what was wrong, he would brush it off, work problems, stress, and I believed him. I wanted to believe him. The supermarket was large and modern, with wide aisles and bright lighting. We went inside, grabbed a cart, and I took out the shopping list I had made that morning. Ben walked beside me, occasionally tossing something into the cart. A pack of chips, a bottle of soda. I selected items methodically, checking them against the list. I enjoyed this process, slowly moving through the aisles, picking fresh vegetables, reading labels, discovering something new and interesting. We moved leisurely through the sections. I picked vegetables, weighed tomatoes, sorted cucumbers. These were too soft. These were just right. I put a few cucumbers in a bag, weighed them, and attached a price sticker. In the dairy section, I picked up cottage cheese, kefir, and sour cream. Ben stood nearby but seemed distracted. He kept checking his phone, looking things up, typing messages. The screen glowed in his hands, and I saw how quickly his fingers moved across the keyboard. "Who are you texting? Waiting for something?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "No, just a colleague. Promised to send some documents," he replied, slipping the phone into his pocket. I nodded and continued selecting groceries. We reached the bread and pastry section. The smell of fresh dough filled the air. It was so homey, so comforting. I picked up a loaf of bread and a few cinnamon rolls. Ben liked them with his tea. I always tried to make him happy, took care of him, cooked his favorite dishes. Maybe I tried too hard. Maybe he had long taken it for granted. Suddenly, Ben stopped and frowned, staring at his phone screen. His face tensed, his eyebrows knitted together. "I need to take this call," he said sharply. "It's important. I'll step aside for a minute." "All right, I'll head to the checkout in the meantime," I said. Ben nodded and quickly walked toward the exit of the sales floor, holding the phone to his ear. I watched him go. Something about his behavior seemed strange, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe he was just tired, or maybe there really were problems at work. I tried to push the unpleasant thoughts away and pushed the cart further. We still needed meat and fish. I approached the refrigerated section, scanning the packages. "Here's a good chicken, fresh, and salmon. Perfect for baking in the oven with vegetables." I put the items in the cart and headed toward the checkout. The line was short, only 2 people ahead. I stood there, glancing at the magazine and chocolate displays by the register. Happy family couples smiled from the covers, promising perfect dinner recipes and tips for a lasting marriage. I smirked to myself as if it's all that simple. An elderly woman with a full cart was ahead of her. The cashier scanned the items slowly and methodically. The woman rummaged through her purse, taking out her wallet and counting coins. I waited patiently, lost in my thoughts about how my life with Ben had changed, about feeling lonely even when he was nearby, about how we hadn't really talked for a long time, hadn't laughed together, hadn't made plans for the future. The line moved forward, and soon I was placing my groceries on the conveyor belt. The cashier, a young woman with a tired face, began scanning the items. Beep, beep, beep. The monotone sound of the scanner was oddly calming. I looked toward the exit, trying to spot Ben, but he was nowhere to be seen. Probably the conversation was taking longer than expected. "That'll be $320, said the cashier. I took out my card and tapped it on the terminal. The transaction went through. I gathered the shopping bags, placed them in the cart, and headed for the exit. Ben still hadn't appeared. The call must really have been important. I stopped by a stand with promotional brochures, deciding to wait there. I checked my phone. It had already been about 10 minutes since he stepped away. It was strange. Usually his work calls didn't take this long. Another minute passed, then another. I began to feel anxious. Where was he? Had something happened? I reached for my phone to call him, but at that moment, an elderly man in a security guard uniform approached her. He was a short, stout man around 60 with gray hair and kind eyes. His face was weathered and tired, but his gaze was attentive and sharp. His badge read Anthony, he said quietly as he came closer. "You came here with a man, correct?" I looked at him in surprise. For some reason my heart skipped a beat. Something in the guard's voice put me on edge. "Yes, with my husband. What happened?" I asked. Anthony hesitated, clearly choosing his words carefully. He looked around to make sure no one was listening, then turned back to her. Worry was etched on his face, even a kind of compassion that scared me even more. Anthony sighed heavily. He looked me in the eyes and I saw something like pity in his gaze. That frightened me even more. "Come with me, dear," he said quietly. "It's about your husband. You'd better see this yourself." My heart sank. Something in the elderly guard's voice, in his sad eyes, in the way he called her dear, made her tense. I felt a chill run down my spine, my hands growing damp with sudden sweat. "What happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What do you want to show me? Is he all right? Come with me. I'll explain everything," Anthony said carefully, taking me by the elbow. "Not here. Let's go to the staff area. There we can talk in private." I felt flustered. My first instinct was to refuse to find Ben, to ask him what was going on, but something in the guard's demeanor made me trust him. Maybe it was the expression on his face. Maybe it was my intuition telling me that this man meant no harm. Or maybe it was his tone, caring, almost fatherly, full of genuine concern. "All right," I said quietly. "I'll go with you." Anthony nodded and led me through the sales floor to the staff door past which ordinary shoppers pass without a second glance. The door was gray and nondescript, with a sign that read "Staff Only." The guard took out a key, unlocked the door, and we entered a narrow corridor with dim lighting. The air smelled musty, a mix of cleaning chemicals and old paint. The walls were painted pale green, and the floor was covered with worn linoleum. I felt my pulse quicken. What's going on? Why is the guard acting so strangely? What is he going to show me? 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, each more frightening than the last. Could something have happened to Ben? Could he have gotten into trouble? Could he have been caught stealing? No, that's ridiculous. Ben would never steal anything. We walked down the corridor and entered a small room. This was the security office. Several monitors on a desk displayed feeds from the store cameras. An old sofa sat against the wall next to a table with a thermos and mugs. Charts, instructions, and shift schedules hung on the walls. Everything was simple and functional. In the corner stood an old fan, and on the windowsill sat a withered ficus in a plastic pot. "Please have a seat," Anthony said, gesturing to a chair by the desk with the monitors. I sat down, keeping my eyes on the guard. My hands trembled, and I clenched them into fists to hide my anxiety. My mouth was dry, and I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself against the rising panic. "What happened?" I asked again, my voice. "Please tell me. You're scaring me." Anthony closed the door and walked over to the monitors. He paused, gathering his thoughts, and I saw him sigh deeply, the wrinkles on his forehead deepening. Then he turned back to me. "You see, dear," he began quietly, "I've worked here for 5 years. In that time I've seen all kinds of things and I've learned to read people pretty well. Comes with experience, you understand? When you see thousands of people every day, you start noticing details that others miss." I listened without interrupting, though inside I felt my chest tightening with anxiety. I wanted him to get to the point quickly, yet at the same time I feared what he might say. "When you and your husband came into the store, I immediately noticed him," Anthony continued. "I don't know why. Something about his behavior just seemed off. He was too tense, checking his phone too often, glancing around nervously. I've had enough experience in life to know when someone is hiding something." I felt my stomach turn. I wanted to protest, to tell him he was wrong, that Ben was just tired, that he had work stress. But the words stuck in my throat. "When he stepped away from you, I followed him on the cameras," Anthony continued, his voice even. "Just out of curiosity, you understand? I didn't want to pry, but something told me I needed to watch, and I saw something that really concerned me." He met my eyes and I felt the ground shift beneath me. Blood rushed to my face, then drained away just as quickly, and the room seemed to blur around her. "With a woman," I whispered. "Which woman? What are you talking about?" "I'll show you," the guard said, turning toward the monitors. "Our cameras record audio in some areas, not everywhere of course, but some sections do. It's a security requirement to capture everything happening in the store, and right in that corner where they were talking, one of those cameras is installed. I listened to their conversation and realized I had to show it to you. I couldn't just stay silent." He pressed a few buttons on the control panel, rewinding the footage. I sat frozen, unable to move. My mind refused to believe what I was seeing. This had to be a mistake. Some misunderstanding. Ben couldn't betray her. He just couldn't. "Here, look," Anthony said softly, pointing to one of the monitors. I shifted my gaze to the screen and froze. On the monitor I saw Ben. He was standing in a far corner of the store near shelves with plastic containers and kitchenware. A woman stood next to him. I had never seen her before. She was an elegant lady of about 40, wearing an expensive coat and high-heeled shoes. Her hair was styled neatly, her makeup flawless. She looked confident, businesslike, successful. Ben was standing very close to her, too close for just an acquaintance. They were talking about something, and from their postures, from the way they leaned toward each other, it was clear this was not a chance encounter. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might leap out of my chest. My hands had gone cold, and my mouth had gone even drier. "I'll turn the sound on now," Anthony said quietly. "Get ready, daughter." What you're about to hear will be hard. He turned the volume knob and sound poured from the speakers. At first, only the general hum of the store could be heard. Distant voices of shoppers, the noise of carts, background music. Then Ben's voice came through, and I recognized it immediately. I had heard this voice every day for 7 years. A voice that told her, "I love you," wished her good morning, promised to always be there. "Everything is going according to plan," Ben said. There wasn't a trace of the warmth he usually used when speaking to Amanda in his voice. It sounded cold, businesslike, calculating. "I've already started preparing the documents, found the right lawyer who agreed to help for a certain amount." "And when will it be ready?" the woman asked. Her voice was low, confident, with a slight rasp. "We don't have much time. The apartment has to be transferred to you by the end of the month, or the whole plan will fall apart." I felt my insides tighten. "Apartment? My apartment? What are they talking about?" "Everything will be done on time," Ben replied. "The lawyer has already started preparing fake documents about debts. We'll make it look like Amanda suddenly has large debts to several creditors. There'll be shell companies, of course, but the papers will look completely legal." The woman nodded, a satisfied smile appearing on her face. "Good job. And then we go to court to declare her incapacitated," Ben continued. I couldn't believe these words were coming from my husband. Death, stress, inability to manage financial obligations. Plus, I'll find a couple of doctors I know who will confirm she has mental health issues. People will sign anything for money. And then they'll appoint you as her guardian, the woman concluded. You'll get full control over her property. The apartment will be yours and we can sell it. We'll split the money in half, just as agreed. I listened to the conversation, feeling as if I were trapped in a nightmare. This can't be happening. This can't be true. This can't be her. Ben, the man she shared a bed with, cooked breakfast for, planned a future with. The man she loved. She suspects nothing? The woman asked, looking around. Ben smirked. And the smirk was full of contempt. Amanda, she's too trusting and stupid to suspect anything. She believes every word I say. The perfect victim. Honestly, I've been preparing for this moment for 7 years. 7 years. 7 years of my life were a lie. Everything she believed in, everything she thought was real, turned out to be a carefully planned deception. Are you sure the court will side with us? The woman asked. After all, this is serious. Stripping someone of their legal capacity isn't easy. I have connections, Ben replied. The judge handling the case has already received his share. He'll issue the right ruling. The main thing is that the documents look convincing, and the lawyer I hired specializes in these kinds of cases. He's handled schemes like this before. He has a whole network of shell companies that supposedly issued loans. How much can we get for the apartment? The woman asked, and her voice betrayed outright greed. At least $1.2 million, Ben replied. The apartment is in a good area, nicely renovated, spacious. There will always be buyers for such a place. $600,000 each. Not a bad sum for 7 years of work. Don't you agree? The woman laughed. You've always been practical, Ben. That's exactly what I value about you. Not like those sentimental fools who believe in love and fidelity. Love and fidelity? Ben snorted. Fairy tales for the naive. In real life, only money and connections matter. Everything else is empty chatter. I sat in front of the monitor as tears streamed down my cheeks. I didn't wipe them away. Didn't try to stop them. I simply stared at the screen and listened as the man I trusted more than anyone in the world calmly discussed a plan to destroy me. Not physically, no, that would have been too crude. He planned to destroy me as a person, to strip me of everything I had, to turn me into a helpless victim completely dependent on him. When do we move into the active phase? The woman asked. Next week, Ben replied. The lawyer is already preparing the documents. A few more days and we'll start filing fake lawsuits from creditors. Amanda will receive subpoenas. Of course, she'll be in shock. I'll play the role of the caring husband trying to help her. I'll say I'll try to negotiate with the creditors, pay off the debts, but naturally nothing will work. The debts will grow. The interest will keep accruing. And then I'll suggest she sign a power of attorney for managing the finances. I'll say it'll be easier for me to sort everything out that way. And if she refuses to sign? The woman asked. She won't, Ben said confidently. She trusts me. Besides, I'll gradually start convincing her that she has problems with her head. I'll say she's become forgetful, absent-minded, that something's wrong with her. I'll start taking her to psychotherapists who will give the necessary diagnosis. In a couple of months, we'll have enough medical reports to file for her to be declared legally incapacitated. I closed my eyes. All of it was so monstrous, so unbelievable, that it felt like fiction, a script for a bad movie. But this was reality. My reality. And what then? The woman asked. After we sell the apartment, divorce? Yes, Ben answered simply. I'll file for divorce, take my share of the money, and disappear. By then she'll already be officially declared incapacitated, so she won't be able to make any claims. Some social services will be appointed as her guardian, and let them deal with her. Cruel, the woman said. There wasn't a trace of sympathy in her voice. It was more a dry statement of fact. Life is cruel, Ben replied. The ones who survive are the smart and calculating ones. Amanda is too soft, too trusting. People like that are ideal victims. I realized that long ago. Even when we first met, I assessed the situation right away. She was lonely, had no parents, owned an apartment, an ideal option. I deliberately started courting her, saying pretty words, giving flowers. Women fall for those banalities so easily. I opened my eyes and looked at the screen. Ben was standing there in his usual jacket and jeans, the very one she herself had washed and ironed. His face was calm, even satisfied. He was smiling at that woman, and there was nothing human in that smile. It was the smile of a predator who had cornered his prey, and was already savoring his victory. So in a month it will all be over? The woman asked. 2 months at most, Ben replied. Courts sometimes drag things out, but everything's under control. The judge, the lawyers, the doctors, they've all been paid. The system works flawlessly. The main thing is not to rush and to do everything carefully. The woman nodded. Good. I'm waiting for results. And remember, no mistakes. If something goes wrong, we could both end up in a very unpleasant situation. Everything will be clean, Ben assured her. I've thought through every detail. Amanda won't even understand what happened until it's too late. They talked a bit more about details, discussed documents, sums, deadlines. I listened as if through cotton wool. The words reached her, but I could no longer process them. Inside I felt empty. 7 years of her life had turned out to be a lie. The man I loved, slept beside, shared everything with, turned out to be a monster, cold-bloodedly planning my destruction. Anthony turned off the sound and looked at Amanda. His face was full of compassion and sorrow. I'm sorry, sweetheart, he said quietly. I know how hard this is, but you had to know. I couldn't let this happen. I've seen too many stories like this. People lose everything. Homes, money, dignity because of scum like this. I remained silent. I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. The words wouldn't come. The tears kept flowing, but I no longer noticed them. You have to act quickly, Anthony continued. You have evidence. This recording is logged in our system, time-stamped and certified. It's official material. With this kind of proof, you'll be able to protect yourself, but you need to act now before they start carrying out their plan. I looked up at him. My eyes were red from tears, my face pale. What should I do? I whispered. I don't know what to do. Anthony crouched down beside me so we were at the same level. He placed his large, warm hand on my shoulder. Right now, you're going to record this video on your phone, he said firmly. I'll help you. This will be your evidence. Then you'll go back into the store as if nothing happened. Don't show him that you know anything. That's very important. He mustn't suspect a thing. But I can't, I whispered. I can't stand next to him and pretend everything is fine. I'm not an actress. You can, Anthony said firmly. You're stronger than you think. And I'll help you. The most important thing right now is to stay calm. You'll go out to him and say, I delayed you because of some formality, a receipt check, anything. He won't suspect anything. And then when you get home, or even right here in the store, you'll call the police. I nodded. My hands were still trembling, but something new began to ignite in my chest. Not just pain and resentment, anger, rage. How dare he? How dare he do this to her? She loved him, cared for him, trusted him, and all this time he had been planning her destruction. "Help me record it," I said, my voice growing steadier. "Right now." Anthony nodded and took my phone. His fingers, accustomed to working with technology, quickly found the necessary settings. He pointed the camera at the monitor and turned the recording back on. I looked at my phone screen, which reflected the footage from the surveillance cameras. Ben and that woman were talking again, once more discussing their vile plan. Anthony recorded everything, the video, the sound, every word, every detail of their scheme. "Done," he said, handing the phone back to me. "Now you have evidence. Save it in several places. Email it to yourself, upload it to the cloud so even if something happens to your phone, the recording won't be lost." I nodded and quickly sent the video to her email. My hands were shaking, but I managed. Then I uploaded the file to cloud storage. Now the recording was safe. What should I do next? I asked. "Call the police right now." Anthony thought for a moment. "The woman is still here too. They can detain both of them. The police will have the footage from our cameras and your recording on your phone. The evidence will be airtight." I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding, but now it wasn't anxiety or fear. It was determination. I would not let them destroy my life. I would not let that bastard take everything she had. "Okay," I said firmly. "I'll call the police right now." Anthony nodded approvingly. "Well done, sweetheart. You're doing the right thing and I'll be right here. If you need help, I'm always here." I took out my phone and dialed the police. My fingers no longer trembled. I was calmly focused. When the dispatcher answered, I clearly and concisely explained the situation. Attempted fraud, planning of a crime, video recordings as evidence, the store's address, and descriptions of the suspects. The dispatcher promised that officers would arrive within 10 minutes. "They're on their way," I said, lowering the phone. "They'll be here in 10 minutes. At 15, my parents took my sister's word as truth and kicked me out during a storm. Now we need to make sure your husband and that woman don't leave. As if I meant nothing to them. I'll go into the store and keep an eye on them. If they try to leave, I'll delay them under some pretext by your own parents. You stay here. And hearing your father say, calm down. When the police arrive, we'll go out together." That night, I was hit by a car. Anthony patted me on the shoulder and left the room. The woman who saved my life stood beside my bed. I sat down on a chair and closed my eyes. So powerful. A storm of emotions raged inside me. Pain, anger, resentment, disappointment ever built. 7 years. My name is Olivia Sterling. 7 years I had been deceived. I'm 28 years 7 years I had lived with a man who was in truth her enemy. But now is not the time for tears. Now is the time to act. I don't need a sick daughter like you. I wiped my eyes and straightened my back. Soaking wet. I was not a victim. To go. I would not let them turn me into one. My younger sister told a lie. I had evidence. A calculated, deliberate lie that my parents believed. I sat in the security room trying to gather my thoughts. I was erased. 10 minutes. 3 hours later, just 10 minutes until the police arrived. I'd been hit by a car. But those minutes felt like an eternity. When Dad walked into that hospital room, I was watching the monitors, which displayed different corners of the store. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Somewhere among the ordinary shoppers. You can't be here. There was a man I considered my husband. The woman sitting there was a man who planned to destroy my life. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the trembling in my hands. She'd found me on the side of the road and saved my life. I couldn't show weakness. Changed everything. Not now. Last month, I stood up from the chair and approached the small mirror on the wall. My face was pale, my eyes red from crying. I splashed my face with cold water from the sink in the corner of the room and dabbed it with a towel. I needed to look normal. Ben mustn't suspect anything. 5 minutes passed. I looked at the monitors again. Anthony was standing by the exit, watching the sales floor carefully. Ben appeared on one of the camera feeds. He was walking between the aisles, clearly looking for me. His face showed slight irritation, probably wondering where she had disappeared to. That woman was also visible on another monitor. She was standing by the magazine rack, scrolling through something on her phone. I clenched my fists. How calm they behave. How confident. They don't even suspect that their plan has been uncovered, that in a few minutes their lives would change forever. My phone rang. I flinched and looked at the screen. Ben. He was calling her. I hesitated for a second, then answered, trying to make my voice sound as normal as possible. "Hello, where are you?" Ben's voice was annoyed. "I've been looking for you for 10 minutes. Did you get lost in the store?" "Sorry," I said, surprised at how calm my own voice sounded. "The security guard held me up. Some problem with the receipt. We're sorting it out now." "The receipt?" Ben repeated. "What kind of problem?" "Some system error," I lied. They say the item was scanned twice. They're checking it. I'll be free soon. All right, Ben grumbled. I'll wait for you at the exit. Just hurry. I've got things to do today. Things. Probably a meeting with the lawyer who's preparing fake documents or with the doctor who has to issue a bogus diagnosis. He's busy. All right, I'll be there soon, I said and hung up. I put the phone on the table and looked at the monitors again. Ben was heading toward the exit, hands in his jacket pockets. An ordinary man just waiting for his wife after shopping. None of the passing customers could imagine that this man was a fraud, planning to steal his own wife's apartment and ruin her life. A few more minutes passed. I heard the sound of sirens outside. The police. They had arrived. My heart began to race. Everything would be decided now. I would find out if I had enough evidence, if they would believe me, if they could do anything. Anthony entered the room. The police are here, he said. I'll bring them in. Are you ready? I nodded. Ready. The security guard left, and a minute later, 2 police officers entered the room. A middle-aged man in uniform and a young female officer. Their faces were serious, professional. Good afternoon, the senior officer said. Did you call the police? Report a fraud attempt. Yes, that's me, I said. My voice trembled despite her attempts to stay calm. I have evidence. My husband. He plans to steal my apartment, create fake debts, declare me incompetent. The officers exchanged glances. Do you have proof of these claims? The female officer asked. Yes. I pulled out my phone. I have a video. He spoke with his accomplice right here in the store. The cameras recorded everything. They discussed the whole plan in detail. I showed the video to the police. They watched and listened carefully. Concern appeared on their faces. When the recording ended, the senior officer nodded. This is serious, he said. Planning fraud, document forgery, possibly corruption if they really bribed a judge. Where are your husband and that woman now? He asked. In the sales floor, Anthony replied. I'm watching them through the cameras. The man is waiting by the exit. The woman is in the magazine section. All right, the officer said. We'll detain them now to clarify the circumstances. You'll need to give a statement at the station, but first, let's handle things here. I nodded. Everything inside me tightened into a tight knot. Soon I would see Ben. I would see his face when he realized everything had been exposed. Part of me feared this encounter, but another part, full of anger and resentment, wanted it. Wanted to see his confidence crumble. That brazen smile vanish from his face. The police officers left the room, and I followed them. Anthony walked beside me, quietly encouraging me. Everything will be fine, sweetheart. You're doing the right thing. We stepped into the sales floor. I saw Ben. He was standing by the exit, looking at something on his phone. A normal posture, a normal expression, nothing unusual. Just a man waiting for his wife after shopping. No passing shopper could even imagine who he really was. The officers walked toward him. I followed behind, feeling my legs grow weak. Ben looked up, noticed the approaching officers and frowned. Then his gaze fell on Amanda, and a flicker of confusion appeared in his eyes. Ben Volkov? The senior officer asked. Yes, that's me, Ben replied wearily. What's this about? You need to come with us for questioning, the officer said. There is information about planned fraud. Ben's face changed. First confusion, then rising anxiety. He looked at me, a mix of disbelief and the beginnings of fear in his eyes. What are you talking about? He asked, trying to sound outraged. What fraud? I don't understand. We'll explain everything at the station, the officer said firmly. For now, please come with us. Ben turned to me, his voice dropping to a pleading tone. What's happening? Can you explain this nonsense? I stared at him, a storm of emotions boiling inside. Pain, anger, disappointment. This was the man who had shared my bed for 7 years, spoken words of love for 7 years, and now stood before me, pretending to understand nothing. I know everything, Ben, I said quietly but firmly. I know about your plan, the fake debts, how you wanted to declare me incompetent and take the apartment. Ben's face turned pale. For a brief moment, raw fear flashed in his eyes, but he quickly regained composure. What are you talking about? He tried to protest. Debts, incompetence. Amanda, are you crazy? I have a recording of your conversation, I said, my voice growing stronger. Where you discussed every detail with that woman. The store cameras recorded everything, including audio. Ben froze. The color drained completely from his face. He opened his mouth but didn't utter a word. His eyes showed complete shock, the realization that everything had collapsed, that his perfect plan had failed. This must be a misunderstanding, he muttered weakly. You've got it all wrong. I've understood perfectly. I cut him off. 7 years, Ben. 7 years you've been deceiving me, pretending to be a loving husband while secretly waiting for the moment you could take everything I have. Meanwhile, the female officer headed toward the magazine section where the elegant woman stood. I watched as the officer approached her. As the woman looked up in surprise, began to protest indignantly. But the officer remained firm. Within a minute, they were both walking toward the exit. Ben watched the approaching woman, panic evident in his eyes. Everything was falling apart. His carefully constructed plan was crumbling right now in front of dozens of shoppers who watched with curiosity. The woman looked at him in confusion. What's happening? She whispered. Shut up, Ben whispered back. Don't say anything. But it was already too late. The senior officer addressed them. We have a video recording of your conversation in which you discuss a fraud scheme. You are both being detained for questioning. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you. The elegant woman tried to protest. This is absurd. I don't understand what this is about. I was just shopping. In that case, you can explain everything at the station, the officer replied calmly. But we have a recording of your conversation with this man in which you discuss a plan to take someone else's property. The woman turned to Ben, fury in her eyes. You idiot, she whispered. You said it would be clean. Shut up. Ben shouted, and the mask of the charming man finally fell away. Now before Amanda stood a completely different person, angry, terrified, cornered. The police escorted both of them to the exit. Shoppers stepped aside, watching the scene with curiosity. Someone was even recording on their phone. I followed, feeling a strange emptiness inside. I thought she would feel relief, satisfaction at this moment. But instead, there was only fatigue and endless sorrow. Police cars with flashing lights were waiting outside. Ben and the woman were placed in separate vehicles. Before getting in, Ben turned and looked at Amanda. His eyes held a mixture of anger and something almost like pleading. Amanda, he called out. Wait, we can talk this through. It's not what you think. I stopped a few steps away. I looked into his eyes. Those eyes she had fallen in love with 7 years ago, which had seemed so honest and kind. No, Ben, I said quietly. This is exactly what I think. And even worse, you didn't just betray me. You stole 7 years of my life. Made me believe in something that never existed. I loved you and you just used me. That's not true, he began. But the officer stopped him gently but firmly, guiding him into the car. I watched the police cars drive away. Then I felt a hand on her shoulder. I turned. Anthony was there. Well done, sweetheart, he said warmly. You did it. It wasn't easy, but you found the strength. Thank you, I whispered, tears welling up again. If it weren't for you, I can't even imagine what would have happened to me. I just did what I had to do. Anthony repeated the words he had said on that memorable day. But the important thing is for you to keep moving forward, to live. You're still young, and your whole life is ahead of you. I nodded, wiping my tears. Yes, many difficulties lay ahead, but the worst was already behind her. Now she knew the truth. Bitter as it was the truth. And with this truth she could move forward. You'll need to go to the station, said the young officer who approached. Give a full statement, sign the report. We can provide a car for you. Thank you, I said. I'll go. I turned to Anthony and unexpectedly hugged him. The old man was slightly taken aback but returned the embrace, patting me on the back. Thank you, I said again. Thank you for everything. You're welcome, sweetheart, he replied. If you ever need anything, I'm here. Come by and tell me how things are going. I nodded and walked to the police car. I sat in the back seat as it drove off. I looked out the window at the passing streets, houses, people. Life went on. My life went on. And now, with the lies exposed, I could begin rebuilding it on an honest foundation, without deceit, without betrayal. At the police station, I spent several hours giving detailed testimony, telling everything I knew about Ben, about our life together, and handed over the video she had recorded in the store. Experts confirmed its authenticity. Original store camera recordings were also seized as evidence. The investigator, a woman in her 40s with a tired but attentive face, listened to everything and said, "We have sufficient grounds to open a criminal case, planning fraud on a large scale, possible document forgery, if they had already begun creating fake debts. Plus, if the information about bribing a judge is confirmed, that's a separate corruption case. Your husband and his accomplice are in serious trouble. What will happen now?" I asked. "They will be held in custody until trial, unless the judge considers releasing them under a travel restriction," the investigator explained. "But given the seriousness of the charges and the risk of flight, they will most likely remain in jail. You will need to attend questioning as required, then testify in court. I also recommend filing for divorce as soon as possible and securing your property." "I will," I said. When I left the station, it was already dark. The sky was overcast and a light drizzle fell. I stood on the steps looking at the illuminated shop windows, the passing cars, the people hurrying along their errands. Each of them had their own life, their own problems, joys, and sorrows. And I had my life, a life that now needed to be pieced back together. I took out my phone and called a taxi. Going home felt strange. A home where everything reminded her of Ben, of their life together, which had turned out to be a lie. But it was her home, her apartment, and she would not allow anyone to take it from her. I arrived home late in the evening. The apartment greeted her with silence and darkness. I turned on the light and looked around. Everything was in its place. The sofa where I and Ben used to watch movies in the evenings. The kitchen table where we had breakfast in the mornings. The photos on the shelves capturing moments of our supposedly happy life together. Every object reminded her of a past that had turned out to be an illusion. I went into the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and closed her eyes. Exhaustion hit me with overwhelming force, both physical and emotional. I felt drained, empty. Yet at the same time, something new was stirring inside her. Relief, a strange, contradictory relief that the truth had finally been revealed. There was no longer any need to guess why Ben had become colder, why he was constantly hiding his phone, why he was often late. Now I knew the answers to all those questions. The next day I went to a lawyer. I had found an experienced family law specialist online. Carolina, a woman in her 50s with a serious face and an attentive gaze. The office smelled of coffee and paper. Rows of legal reference books lined the shelves. "Tell me everything from the beginning," Carolina said, opening her notebook. I recounted everything. Meeting Ben, 7 years of life together, the day in the store, the security footage, the arrest. The lawyer listened attentively, occasionally taking notes. "You did absolutely the right thing," the lawyer said when I finished. "You have solid evidence, a video recording clearly documenting the crime. That's a very strong position. Now we need to act quickly. First," she continued, "we file for divorce immediately. Second, we secure your property. We impose a restriction on any transactions involving the apartment. Third, if they have already started creating fake debts, we need to challenge all those documents." "But how can I know if they've managed to file anything?" I asked. "We'll request an extract from the registry. Check for any encumbrances on your property," the lawyer explained. "We'll also request a report from the credit bureau to see if any loans have been taken out in your name. If we find anything, we'll contest it as fraudulent activity." I nodded. My head was spinning from the abundance of legal terms and procedures. But Carolina patiently explained everything. "How long will all this take?" I asked. "The divorce will take a few months. The criminal case against your husband and his accomplice could drag on longer, up to a year or more," the lawyer replied. "But the important thing is your property will be protected. They won't be able to do anything." In the following days, I seemed to live in a parallel world. During the day, I went to various offices, consulting a notary, checking the registry, meeting with lawyers, attending police interviews. In the evenings, I returned home and went through habitual routines mechanically. Cooking dinner, cleaning, watching TV, but I saw and heard nothing. My thoughts constantly returned to Ben, to those 7 years I had considered happy. My friend Chloe, upon hearing what had happened, rushed over that same evening with a bottle of wine and a box of chocolates. "Amanda, I can't believe it," she said, sitting in the kitchen. "Ben seemed so normal. I never would have thought he was capable of this." "I didn't think so either," I replied quietly. 7 years, Chloe. 7 years he played a role, and I didn't notice anything." "Don't blame yourself," Chloe said, taking my hand. "It's not your fault. He's a professional con man. He knows how to deceive." "But I should have noticed something," I whispered. "Some signs, some oddities. There must have been some." "It's always easy to see the signs in hindsight," Chloe said. "You loved him. You trusted him. That's normal. And he took advantage of your trust. He's a monster, not you." We sat in the kitchen until late at night, drinking wine and reminiscing. Chloe told funny stories, trying to cheer me up, and sometimes she succeeded. I caught myself laughing, and it felt strange. How could she laugh when there was such emptiness inside? 2 weeks passed. I filed for divorce. Ben was in custody, but had the right to send his representative to court. The lawyer warned that he might try to drag out the process, file counterclaims over property division. "Let them try," Carolina said. "We have evidence of his fraudulent intentions. The court will take that into account." The criminal investigation progressed. It turned out that Ben and his accomplice, Mia Miller, had indeed already started executing their plan. Contracts with fake lending organizations, which supposedly issued large loans to Ben, were found. The documents were skillfully forged, the signatures faked. They also found the lawyer who had prepared the papers. He was arrested and gave testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence. "It turns out this isn't their first scam," the investigator said during one of the interviews. "Miller has already carried out similar schemes. She has a whole network of associates. Fake lenders, corrupt doctors, and bribable officials. Your husband met her through mutual acquaintances and got drawn into this scheme." "So he married me on purpose?" I asked. "He had planned it from the very beginning." The investigator remained silent. Judging by Miller's testimony, who had started cooperating, yes, they had chosen you as a target even before meeting you, a single woman with her own apartment in a good neighborhood. Ben needed to gain your trust, marry you, and wait for the right moment. 7 years is a long time, but for them it was an investment. They planned to get an apartment worth over $1.2 million. I listened, feeling not pain but anger growing inside her. Cold, clear anger. My life had been nothing more than a business project to them, an investment. 7 years of pretense for money. "But there's some good news," the investigator continued. "We found the judge they supposedly bribed. He denies receiving any bribe, and that hasn't been proven yet. Maybe they were just bragging, but the fact of planning fraud and forging documents is ironclad. Both of them are facing real jail time." Months passed. I gradually returned to life. I went back to work. I worked as an accountant in a small company, and my colleagues, aware of her situation, showed sympathy and support. Work helped me focus elsewhere and not dwell on what had happened. Numbers, reports, documents all required concentration and left no room for self-pity. In the evenings, I started going through Ben's things. His clothes, books, and personal items. Everything had to be removed from the apartment. I packed everything into boxes, and each item brought back memories. This shirt, he wore it on their anniversary. This book. We read it aloud together in the evenings. Every item was tied to a story, a moment from their life together, a life that turned out to be fake. It was especially hard to sort through the photographs, pictures of us at the beach, in the mountains, at friends' birthdays. In all the photos we looked happy. Ben was hugging her, smiling at the camera. And in all those smiles, in all those hugs, there wasn't a trace of truth. Just a performance, a role he had mastered. I gathered all the photographs and put them in a box on a far shelf in the closet. I didn't throw them away. I couldn't, but I didn't want to look at them anymore. For months after that memorable day in the store, the court session for the divorce took place. Ben was brought to court from prison. I saw him for the first time since his arrest. He had changed a lot. He was thinner, gaunt, his face unshaven. His clothes were wrinkled. Prison issue. When our eyes met, Ben tried to smile, but it was a pathetic, forced smile. "Amanda," he called as they were led into the courtroom. "Can I talk to you?" Lawyer Carolina touched my hand warningly, but I nodded. "All right, speak." Ben stepped closer. The guards watched him wearily. "Amanda, I know you hate me," he began quietly. "And you have every reason to. But I want you to know, not everything was a lie. In the first years, I really did care about you. You're good. You were a good wife, but not good enough not to rob me," I said coldly. Ben lowered his eyes. "I got involved in this mess out of foolishness. Mia, she convinced me. Said it was easy money. Nothing bad would happen. I didn't think it would turn out like this. You spent 7 years preparing to steal my apartment," I said, her voice firm. 7 years pretending. And now you want to say it was foolishness? No, Ben, it was your choice, and now you bear the responsibility. "I'm sorry," Ben said, tears audible in his voice. "Please forgive me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but..." "No," I cut him off. "You don't deserve it, and I won't forgive. You stole 7 years of my life, made me believe in something that never existed. And the only thing I regret is not seeing through you sooner." A guard touched Ben's shoulder. "Please take your seat." Ben obediently went to the bench. I watched his back and felt nothing. Emptiness. This man no longer stirred love or hatred in her, only fatigue and a desire to be done with this story. The court session was brief. Ben did not contest the divorce and made no claims. His lawyer was passive. Half an hour later, the judge announced the decision. The marriage was dissolved. All property remained with Amanda, since the apartment had been hers before the marriage, and the evidence of the respondent's fraudulent intentions excluded any claims he might have on the division of assets. "Thank you," I whispered to my lawyer as we left the courtroom. "You're welcome," Carolina smiled. "You did very well. You carried yourself with dignity." I stepped out of the courthouse and took a deep breath. Spring. The sun shone brightly. The first leaves were budding on the trees. The air smelled of renewal. I was free. Officially legally free from the person who had deceived me for so many years. The criminal trial against Ben and Mia Miller took place 6 months later. I attended as a witness and victim, giving testimony, answering questions from the prosecutor and attorneys, explaining how everything had happened and how the elderly security guard had saved her from disaster. The court was strict. The evidence was irrefutable. Security footage, witness statements, and the discovered forged documents. Ben was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Mia Miller received 7 years, as it was revealed that she had organized the scheme and had carried out similar scams before. When I left the courtroom after the verdict, I felt the weight that had hung on her shoulders for months finally lifted. Justice had been served. The people who had tried to ruin her life had been punished. That same evening, I went to the supermarket where it had all begun. I found Anthony at his usual post by the entrance. The old man was delighted to see her. "Child," he exclaimed, "I'm so glad to see you. How are you? How was the trial?" "It's over," I said, a genuine smile appearing on my face for the first time in a long while. He was sentenced to 6 years. "I'm free." Anthony hugged me fatherly. "Well done. I knew you could handle it. You're a strong woman." "Thanks to you," I said. "If it weren't for you, I can't even imagine what would have happened to me." "I just did what I had to do," Anthony repeated the words he had said on that memorable day. "But the important thing is for you to keep moving forward, to live. You're still young, and your whole life is ahead of you." I nodded. I took a box of chocolates and a bouquet of flowers from her bag. "These are for you as a token of my gratitude. I know no gift could ever express what I feel." "Thank you, child," Anthony said, accepting the gifts, tears glistening in his eyes. "Thank you. You must come by again." "Okay, tell me how life is going." "I'll definitely come," I promised. Life gradually settled. I renovated my apartment, changed the wallpaper, bought new furniture. I wanted to erase all traces of the past, to create something new, my own. The apartment transformed, brighter, cozier. New paintings adorned the walls, new curtains, new pillows on the sofa. Everything was fresh, clean, free of memories. At work, I was promoted to chief accountant. I accepted. The job took more of her time, but that was good. Less time was left for sad thoughts. My friend Chloe introduced me to her cousin Thomas, a civil engineer, a tall, calm man with kind eyes. They met at a cafe, had coffee, and talked. Thomas turned out to be an engaging conversationalist, telling stories about his work, construction sites, how buildings rise from the ground. I listened, realizing I hadn't had such simple, light-hearted conversations in a long time. They started dating, not often, once a week, sometimes less. They went to the movies, cafes, walked in the park. Thomas didn't rush or pressure her. He understood that I had been through a lot and needed time, and I was grateful for his patience. A year passed since that day in the supermarket, a year that had changed her entire life. I sat on the balcony of my renovated apartment, drinking tea and watching the sunset. The sky was pink, clouds drifted slowly, changing shapes. Below, the city buzzed, cars, voices, life. I thought about what had happened, how easily everything could be lost, how important it is to trust intuition, heed warning signs, and that not all people are as they seem. But I also thought about the good people in the world. People like Anthony, who didn't walk past, who risked getting involved. People like my friend Chloe, who supported me in a difficult moment. My parents took people my sister's like Thomas, word as truth, who patiently waited while I healed my wounds, telling me to leave. My phone vibrated. Nothing to them. A message from Thomas. Can you imagine being a 15-year-old girl? How about a walk tomorrow? Thrown out into a raging good weather by your own parents. I smiled and typed a reply happily. I finished my tea, stood up, and stepped inside the apartment. I was hit by a car. My apartment, when my dad arrived at the hospital. The woman who saved my life stood beside my bed, I would build myself on my own terms, so powerful. With open eyes and a vigilant heart. Rattle my parents. I had walked through the fire of betrayal and emerged I would stronger. Ever build. And now, looking back at that day in the supermarket, I'm 28 I understood years old. It was not the end. 13 years ago, it was the beginning. On a stormy October night, the beginning of her true life. My father looked me in the eye and said, "What would you have done if you discovered your husband was planning to destroy your life for money?" I was 15. Have you ever had your intuition scream at you that something was wrong? My younger sister told a lie. Tell me what you think. I really want to know.